Welcome back, everyone. Today's video is going to be mainly a list of uranium stocks that I believe are worth a look or worth a close look, if you will. So before I get into the list, I just want to make it very clear that none of this is investment advice. There are, of course, more companies than the ones that I've listed here. However, I do believe that these are worth a closer look. Now, that said, I'm not saying that all of these are cheap. I'm not saying all of these are good. I'm saying that they might be worth a look to potentially buy at some price. Now, that said, this is just given my thesis, and there's a whole bunch of other people that have much different preferences, and I'm not saying that that's right or wrong. Some people might want to go about it differently than I have. So again, this is just an opinion, and this is not saying these are all good and everything else is bad or everything else is bad. Not at all. I'm just saying, let's have a look at these. So although this is not at all in order, I have to start with Cameco. And the reality is you don't need to overly complicate your uranium investment. Cameco is the second biggest producer in the world. It's based in Canada. It trades in the US and Canada. It's it's the most liquid investment in uranium. So it needs to be looked at. Next on the list is another one that you've probably heard of if you've been around at all recently in uranium, and that is NexGen. And this deserves a look because it is the biggest junior in the world, and it has a large high-grade deposit in Canada. Next is a company that has been around for a while, is Denison. And they also have a large high-grade deposit in Canada, and they have multiple assets, and it's interesting if they could pull off their strategy. Now, next is Uranium Participation Corp, and much like its cousin in the UK, Yellowcake, this just holds and tracks physical uranium. So you don't have to worry about the futures and the roll. This is just, it holds physical. There's a minor storage fee, very minor, but have a look. But basically, it should just track the price of uranium. And if it doesn't, if it goes too low, then they can sell the uranium to buy back the shares, creating value. Same thing, if it goes too high, they can sell shares to buy more uranium, creating value. Next is Global Atomic, and many of you will probably know my thoughts on Global Atomic. I've spoken about it in the past. They are Niger-based. They have a very large deposit, and they have cash flow from zinc recycling, which is an interesting take on a way to play uranium. Now for the section that probably gets the most pushback in this video. And before I get into the picks for the Nuclear Fuel Working Group country, neither of these are for the Nuclear Fuel Working Group itself, but there are a number of companies, uranium companies based in the US, and a number of them are quite popular. There are many companies here that are interesting to certain degrees. I picked the ones where I A, agree with what the management is doing, and B, agree with what the management is saying. There's a lot of there's a lot of instances in the companies that could fall in this group where I personally just don't like what is going on, even if it is potentially right for the company in certain cases. So there's only going to be two here, but that's just personal thoughts. I'm not saying the others are bad. The first one, based in the US, that I believe is worth a look and may not have been seen on wherever you heard about uranium, is ENCORE Energy. Now, this is a bet on a knowledgeable management team, and the way they've kind of structured the company and the decisions made, it basically is a call option on uranium. And that is how I think of this company, but I do like it. And the other US-based company that I believe is probably worth a look, even if you might not have heard of it, is LARAMIDE Resources. And LARAMIDE is a company that has a decently sized asset in the US and in Australia, and their main question is the permitting. And on the subject of the land down under, here are the Australian picks, and there are a few that are pretty good. Now, the first one that's Aussie listed that I think is interesting, probably worth a look, is BANNERMAN Resources. And they are a Namibia-based deposit, and they have a very large deposit, and it's a higher cost, but it's it's an interesting one to look at if you believe security of supply is going to come into the picture in this cycle. If you believe that there's some sovereign or some big fund that wants to secure their uranium, then this asset might be more than its outward economic value. Next Aussie listed company that I believe is definitely worth a look is Boss Resources. And they are an ISRable deposit, if you will, and they are just waiting on price. Next Aussie listed Aussie deposit is VIMY Resources. And again, deposit waiting to build a mine, waiting for the price, based in Australia, and it's a average size. I would go with average size deposit and potential mine. Next Aussie listed company that I believe is worth a look is PALADIN. Now, I believe there's a bit more to clarify here because there's a lot of different bull cases around PALADIN. And first thing to mention is that it's different from what it used to look like. They have 75% of the large Langerheinrich Namibian asset, and that'll produce for them between 3.9 and 4.85 million pounds. So that is their capacity now. They have sold their secondary asset, which I'll get to maybe in a second. You never know. And so they can operate, they can be back into production quickly. But the question is because I've seen some bull cases with people saying, yes, they can get back into production very quickly, relatively quickly, and they can. But people are also saying, yes, and they're worth this much at this price. And yes, they are, but you can't be worth this much at a higher price and be in production first at a lower price and get both worlds, if you will. So if you're going to undercut the price and get in production sooner, the NAV is less than what people say the NAV is. I hope you understand that little thing, but Paladin is worth a look. They have made some decisions that I disagreed with under prior management, but there's a new CEO in, and under them, it's probably worth a look. Lastly, from Australia is LOTUS Resources. Now, many of you may have guessed that based on what I said in the prior slide. And they have Paladin's old, please don't ask me to pronounce the name of the mine. Although, in fairness, it's probably not as bad as Kazatomprom mines. But anyway, they're based in Malawi, and they currently have a mine that's already built. It's on care and maintenance, hasn't operated in a number of years now, but there is still a bit of life left in the mine. So we'll have to see what they can do. But right now, their market cap is really small, so they could do quite well if they manage to bring this together. There are at least half, I would say, of the uranium companies that are out there that are explorers, meaning they're looking for uranium. And while I normally am less crazy about that segment of the mining life cycle, here are a few companies that I do think are probably worth a look, worth following as we go. First, based in the Athabasca Basin, that's Canada, not some under the sea country, although there are lakes there. But anyway, SKYHARBOUR Resources. They're drilling for uranium, and they've been doing what they've said they're going to do. Next is a bit of a tricky one, also based in the Athabasca Basin. This is standard uranium, and I say it's tricky because as of the time of recording this, it is not yet public. I have been following the story a bit for, well, a little bit in the past and now a bit more, and I believe that it is probably something worth following heading into the future. Thirdly, in this video, pure point uranium. Again, Athabasca Basin, interesting. I kind of like what they've been trying to do and how they've been managing through this, through the length of the downturn. So that's it for the video. Now, I know I forgot, well, omitted, well, neglected certain companies. And I'm sorry if there's a company that you really like that is not here. Maybe it should be. If you're wondering why it didn't make it onto this video, maybe there could be a number of reasons. Maybe I think the management is making decisions that are based in a reality that is not the one I believe I'm living in. Let's just say that. Maybe I think the project is too small to matter. Maybe I think I don't like the strategy of the company. Maybe I think that the company is saying one thing and doing something else. Maybe um, they've done things they've just plowed through and hasn't been doing what I believe is smart. Maybe the companies have proved to not know, proved to be wrong, made some bad decisions. Maybe I just don't like where they're positioned right now. Maybe it doesn't fit my thesis. So there could be a whole number of reasons. Maybe I don't even, maybe I think it's a fine company, but I don't think of it as a uranium company. So there's a whole bunch of possible reasons. I'm not going to be commenting on all the companies that I think are bad because they could be good for a different thesis from mine. So, you have to think about what the company is doing and what they're saying and if that makes sense to you. I made the last slide, then I thought about it, then I wanted to add one thing. There's definitely some good companies that are not included here. Now, why is that? Often there's going to be CEO and they talk a lot and they do a lot of things and they have to. They have to do a lot of things. But sometimes they seem to do things for the sake of doing things and spend money for the sake of spending money and try to push their story for the sake of trying to push their story. And sometimes that gets to me. And there's certain CEOs out there, like I will listen to them talk and I struggle to get to the end of the interview because I just want to shut it off because I don't really want to hear the biased, slanted things that they may have envisioned as is best for their company. That said, some people could think that it is right for a CEO to promote nonsense with the hopes of boosting their share price, getting more people to buy the share price if they believe that that is for the best of the current shareholders or the future shareholders because maybe they think they know what's going on and the shareholders or the investors just need to buy the company and let them worry about the rest. Maybe some people think that's right, but there's a few cases of that type of thing, and I've just, not it's not only that got companies excluded for the list, but anything that type of thing kind of gets on my nerves, and so there's a few cases of things like that that, even to minor degrees, sometimes have precluded companies from being on this list. So in the past, when I've discussed things like this, I've received a number of comments about do I think certain companies will go bankrupt? And while I'm not going to say that no company will go bankrupt, I would point to the fact that, look, all of the companies that are still around, all of the uranium companies that are still around, have been around for a long time. And how do they survive? Well, they survive by issuing equity, issuing shares to continue to progress or just keep the lights on. And the thing is, they've all made it this long, and most of them don't have any debt. So if you don't have debt, it's more challenging to go bankrupt because you could just issue shares, and if the asset is worth the money, then it probably will get the money and the company will continue to survive. So that is a big relevant thing in a situation like this. So all the companies that still exist, I don't think of any as something that will probably go bankrupt. I don't think any will, but you know, it's possible that one or two could. So I'm not saying they won't, but I'm just saying that this really wouldn't be the top of my worry list, because if the asset is good enough, if the company is well managed enough, I don't think it will go bankrupt. Well, that's it for today's video. Again, thanks for watching, everyone. Remember, this is not investment advice. And also remember, there's some good companies that are not included in this. Sometimes I just disagree with what the company is, something about the company, and so that may have excluded it from the list, but doesn't mean it's not a good company, doesn't mean there's not a thesis where it's the best company, just not for me. Anyway, I will catch everyone next time and have a great day.